On parallel session now, you can listen to Volodymyr Kovalenko and Sergei Komberyanu from Ukraine. They're going to be talking about the synergy between Lean and AI. In another parallel session, we have Christophe Riboulet from France, and he's going to be talking about revolutionizing inspection using Jidoka and AI to reduce non-quality costs. And here on the main stage, I already see Olaf Butger, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, from the Danaher group, and René Arnau from LME in the Netherlands, who's going to moderate him. Hello, guys. Good morning. Great to have you.
Morning.
Good morning.
The stage is yours for the next 30 minutes. Have a great session.
Thank you, Roberto. And a very warm welcome to you, Olaf. It's a pleasure having you on stage here with us. We already met before, but I've always been a fan of Danaher and the Danaher business system. I often use Danaher as one of the examples of companies outside of Toyota that show for many decades that other companies can also apply Lean and be as successful as Danaher has been. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Olaf. You've been a Lean coach for many years within the company, but also in companies they acquired. So we're looking forward to hearing your story. Questions we will be asking at the end, and hopefully there's going to be some time, but I'm sure there's going to be some time to discuss with you further. So the stage is yours, Olaf.
Thank you, René, for the kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. I heard there's at least one person trying to do the 24 hours, so special welcome to you. And thanks for having me, and thanks to René and the team for putting this on for the Lean community. It's just a terrific event, and I'm very happy to be part of it. I am in Danaher, but today I'm going to share a bit of a personal story. As René said, I've been involved in Lean for quite a bit. I've got 26 years of experience in Danaher, and then also in Procter & Gamble before. And I've not always been a Lean coach. I've been a business leader. I'm a certified executive coach. So let me share a few personal learnings about what we see here on the screen, right? Acting, improving, repeating, adapting, and learning, and see whether some bits and pieces resonate. And I have a few slides only, so there will be plenty of time for any questions you have. Looking forward to the discussion. So what is a successful continuous improvement approach? A lot of the discussions we have is or are about tools. And when I reflect about my journey, obviously tools are important, and I've created several innovation tools for Danaher, which are now part of the Danaher business system. But I'd like to talk a bit about two other elements which are very important from my point of view for continuous improvement. One is whether we're making business progress and we're actually applying these tools and the continuous improvement approach in a good way, which is then visible in the business. And secondly, whether we're developing our people to be able to use Lean to drive the business forward. And I think those are some areas which I sometimes see a bit under-discussed, under-focused on, if you like. So I'd like to spend a bit of time on these two. And one of the key things I'd like to suggest is that you need to focus on both of them together. And on this slide, I'd just like to share what happens if you only focus on one of them. If you only focus on the business progress side, you get a few quick initial wins, but you get a lack of sustainment,
Olaf,
right? It's often...
It seems that your presentation is not visible. Can you try to share again? Sorry.
Oops. Thank you. That's one of the things we try to avoid, right? Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Yes, super.
Very good. Sorry about that.
Presentation mode. Super. Thank you very much.
Very good. Yeah, in Danaher, we typically say this is $10 now. Either we can't hear you, we can't see you, we can't share. So that's $10 into the team's the team's kind of cash register. Apologies for that.
No problem.
Let me just share the main slides again. So focus on tools versus focus on business progress and people development. Let's talk a bit about business progress and people development. Should be connected, and we need to balance both. If we don't balance both, and that was the slide I was on, if we don't balance both, if we just focus on one of the two sides, what do you get? If you just focus on the business progress, you get quick initial wins, but you might not have a good sustainment. You get a bit of a flavor of the month. And as I've called it here, you fall back to square one. And then what's one of the conclusions? Well, continuous improvement doesn't work, right? We tried it, we couldn't sustain, it doesn't work. So that's what happens when you focus on the business progress only. If you focus on the people development only, it very much becomes a training exercise. People go to the training, they come back into their real work, but it doesn't translate, right? They will carry on working exactly as before because the training content isn't really relevant with what the employee or the associate is struggling with now. And guess what? Continuous improvement doesn't work. People come back from the training and they can't really connect it. So that's again where I think we need to have both of them together. And I just give you a few things from my history in P&G. We always called that building the business and building the organization together. The best people do both. Another saying we had a lot was to leave the business in a stronger state than when you joined. Make it more important, both on the business performance and the people development. In Danaher, we used the 70-20-10 model. So your people development, your own development should be 70% on the job, 20% coaching, 10% training. And if you've been following Larry Culp's work at GE, he talks about Kaizen, he talks about Gemba, he talks about the customer. Again, together, people development and creating results in the business. And what I've seen in my 26 years is that you put these two things together, the business development and the people development, it does work and it does create results. And René mentioned a few sort of statements about Danaher at the beginning of the presentation. I see day in, day out that it does work. So I can subscribe to the fact that continuous improvement really gives you business results and people development at the same time. So you need to do it together. And then obviously, when you look at my day-to-day job here in Danaher, you see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I want to share a bit about what the best do to win. For those of you who don't know Danaher, it's a company which does a lot of acquisitions, which makes our work on continuous improvement a bit more challenging because we constantly get new people and new acquisitions. Danaher is a 40-year-old company, but the oldest operating company within Danaher is 20 years old. So think about it. In the last 20 years, we've completely recycled the people, the businesses, the customers we have within Danaher. And that obviously puts a very high challenge to making continuous improvement work because we constantly get new acquisitions coming in. René and I talked a bit about my job, which is inside Teva, the GE Biopharma acquisition in 2020, an organization which has come from outside Danaher, and we're now working on the continuous improvement of that part of Danaher. So what do the best do to win? And I see three characteristics which I reflect on a lot about how this is useful for making continuous improvement work for yourselves. So the first one is the courage to be honest. In Lean, we often talk about making things visible, the red and the green. And what the best do is they do statements, they give us statements like, we're red, Here's what we're going to do to improve or to fix the gap. The not so good people give you some of the statements on the right. We don't really have targets here in this business, so let's assume we're green. We're okay. We're red, but we're not really that red. Here's why we're not really that red at all. And then you get 10 minutes on why we shouldn't take any action because, yeah, it's kind of red, but it's not that red, right? The targets are not fair, right? The market is tough on us. Okay, well, that's life. But if it's that the kind of discussion, then you will not get any action. And the last one is another favorite of mine. We're in a post-COVID market now, and we gained a lot from COVID. Now we're suffering a bit from COVID. Well, the market is not behaving as expected. Okay, great. So do we all know go home or what, right? So I hope it's a bit of a funny way, although when you're in the day-to-day realities, it isn't always that funny, to show you the difference between the courage to say we're red and we're going to do something about it versus we don't really want to be honest about the red because of the ego or because we're a wonderful company or because we're arrogant or what have you, right? So that's number one, courage to be honest. Number two, the humility to listen and learn. Continuous improvement only works if you're happy or at least open to admit that you're not perfect at the moment. If you're perfect, you don't need continuous improvement. And again, I give you the two sides here. The humble people would probably say something like, I think we have a good hypothesis. Let's go to Gemba, get more data to confirm, and regroup next week. And then do another hypothesis, right? The kata coaching, scientific learning, whatever we want to call it. Where I've seen people struggle with continuous improvement is the right-hand side here. I've worked in this industry for 25 years. I don't need data or system. I feel the market. Okay, great, wonderful. If you feel the market, you probably don't need continuous improvement because you're not working in a database way. You're not going to change your way anyway. That's fine. But then don't ask me to help you in continuous improvement, right? What we see is also the overly compliant way of using continuous improvement. In Germany, we often jokingly call that being more Catholic than the Pope, right? We have to implement the approach as is. We must not customize it to the situation. The Lean Six Sigma textbook says you need to do it this way, so we have to do it this way. That's also not very useful because the humility also includes the continuous improvement approach. A lot of what we have in the Danaher business system is best practice from somewhere within Danaher, but it doesn't necessarily work as is in another part of Danaher. So let's be open to adapt it, and let's also be humble about the Danaher business system or whatever approach you're using in your company or your organization. It doesn't always work exactly as it is. So let's continue to adapt it and learn and improve. Number two, humility, right? To listen and to learn and to keep growing, to keep adapting. And that's why I like the topic of the conference, right? Adaptability. It's all about adaptability. If we just stop learning, it's not going to work. And then the last one, very surprising for everybody on the call, I would assume it's a discipline to execute. It's less about talking, it's more about doing. And we have this expression in Danaher, have you done what you said you would? Red, green, right? Yes, I have done what I said I would, or no, I've not done what I said I would. So that's important because as our CEO back in the P&G days said, A.G. Leffley always reminded us execution is the only strategy the consumer ever sees. If you don't execute, you might have the best strategy in the world, but your consumer or your customer is not going to see it. And you know all the excuses, right? You've heard them, I've heard them, René has heard them. Well, we haven't really had time to focus on this, and then the IT wasn't ready, and we had a business issue, la, 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 la. René's in the Netherlands, it snowed this morning, I'm in Germany, it snowed this morning. What a wonderful excuse. And I had it in one of my Danaher PSPs way back. We couldn't sell in Gen because there was snow. Okay, good. What do we do about the snow? What's the countermeasure? Good luck. And that brings me to my last slide, that you can make some personal key choices for successful continuous improvement, I think, in terms of the where to play, what to focus on. It's focusing on the business progress and the people development together, and the tools help you to do so. And then the how to win: be courageous to be honest, have the courage to say it's red, be humble to listen and learn and adapt and improve, continuously improve yourself, and then have the discipline to execute, because reading a book about losing weight's not going to help you. If you want to lose weight, if you want to save money, it's about the execution. It's about doing it. So the doing is probably more important than the talking. And with having said that, I'll stop the talking and see whether we have any questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Olaf. Let's open the Q&A for questions. And to get us going, can I ask you a first question? Because so Danaher has been on the journey for almost 40 years. We discussed a bit about leadership. So how do you get leadership at Danaher to really be courageous, to be honest, show humility and the discipline? I mean, it sounds easy, but we both know it's very hard. So how do you work within Danaher to do this?
Yeah, thanks, René, for that question. What I've shared about in terms of courage, humility, and discipline applies to the CEO or even the leader of the board as well. And one of our two founders, Mitch Rails, gave a podcast, which you can find on the internet, where he talked about his personal involvement and his personal interest in continuous improvement. So think about it. One of the two founders of Danaher 40 years ago is personally interested in continuous improvement. And obviously, he and our two founders are still very much involved in the board of directors. They asked our CEOs, Larry Culp, Tom Joyce, now Rainer Blair, to show that same personal, no questions asked commitment to DBS. So it really starts as the top, as we often joke in Germany, the fish stinks from the head, right? So if you want to have continuous improvement work, start from the top. If the CEO isn't personally committed to this, I don't think it's going to work. And Danaher confirms that as many other companies as well, including Toyota, of course.
Yeah. I have a question from Elsa Carson, and she asks, how do you address not ideal behavior?
That's a good question. That's where the people development comes in. And as I said, I'm an executive coach, a certified executive coach, because that's part of my role, to go back and say, look, we saw this behavior. What do you think this does to the rest of your organization in terms of your commitment to continuous improvement? And sometimes coaching helps. Sometimes it doesn't. And in the latter case, you need to react to it as an organization. And I'm talking broader than Danaher here. If you have people who are not committed to continuous improvement and who don't want to change, those are probably people you need to exit, because they might be destroying the culture, and they might put so much friction into the system that continuous improvement is not going to work. So if people are visibly not committed to continuous improvement or anything else, I would personally treat this very, very much like a compliance case, right? At a certain amount of misbehavior or non-support, you need to act with all the way up to termination.
So change the people or change the people?
Or change the people, yes.
Next question from Sean Danaher. I hope I pronounce your name well. Excellent presentation. How do you measure people development to ensure it gets priority as well as business progress?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. We have a lot of discussions on that. Often it's a more qualitative judgment Obviously, you can measure whether people have done trainings, whether people go into Kaizens, whether people go into important Kaizens. We use Shingijutsu a lot, like GE does. Do you have leaders in Shingijutsu Kaizens to make a personal commitment to a full day of Kaizen with one of the Shingijutsu senseis? So that's one way of doing it. Toyota does playbook assessment. We do a playbook assessment as well, sort of maturity levels to see where people are. And then you can also work with personal commitments, right? We talked about courage, humility, and discipline. You can ask people where they are in terms of courage to be honest on a scale between 1 and 10. And then you can ask their boss and you can ask their peers. And you can use that as a bit of a quantitative assessment as well. What you can also do more from the executive coaching angle is to ask people what kind of behavior they want to improve, which could be continuous improvement or something else. And then you ask their peers for a judgment or quantification of whether they've done so, right? I want to become a better listener. And then after 6 months, all my stakeholders, all my peers could give me a rating between -3 and +3 on whether I've actually improved my listening. That also gives you some ideas of how to quantify or judge or assess whether you're improving on some of these elements.
Yeah, thank you, Olaf. Next question is from Dimitri Leopoldo Quirino Ferreira. Wow, beautiful name. Other than financial recognition, what would help team members to pursue individual development?
What we learn a lot, especially in my team, where we have DBS leaders, people come from other functions into DBS, is this learning opportunity, right? I often say this is one of the best on-the-job MBAs you can do. You can learn how to run a business. You work with presidents. You work with VPs. This helps you to do a better job. And my own story is the same, right? I led a business, about $500 million business, as a business leader myself. This stuff helps me to run a better business. I've proven that. I talked about an innovation tool I generated earlier. We have quantifiable data which shows that this works. And sometimes when we do boot camps about that, people tell me after the boot camp, wow, I didn't know we could do launches so much better. So I think there's a connection to the desire of just learning and being a better person and doing a better job. And if this helps, it just gives an enormous amount of energy. At least that's what I see in my boot camps and when I work with people.
Yeah, super. Pedro Montero is asking, how do you make sure the right strategy and the courageous, humble, and disciplined behaviors are deployed across the organization? Especially, I think, not just you do a lot of acquisitions. So how do you get new companies quickly into the same culture? It must be quite a challenge.
Absolutely. And the strategy is absolutely key, right? So we work on the strategy first. And if you look at strategy approaches, in a way, it's a bit like lean, right? You set a target into the future. You look at where we're now, you create a gap, and then you work on countermeasuring the gap, kind of proactive gap closing, if you like. That's what's strategy for me. And then if you look at, we like many others use the model from A.G. Leffley, the playing to win, which is well publicized. So you have an aspiration, you have a where to play, you have a how to win, you have capabilities, and you have a system, a management system. If you think about this cascade of the 5 key choices for strategy, then the management system and the capabilities is where lean comes in. It helps you to close that gap faster and better than your competitors. And that's how we use lean. That's how Procter & Gamble uses lean. That's how GE uses lean. So the connection between strategy and lean or continuous improvement is a tight one. But as I said, strategy needs to be first. If we don't have a gap versus the performance we want to achieve, or if we have a tiny gap, and I talked about an example right before the meeting, well then why bother? If you're growing 2% now and you want to grow 2.2% tomorrow, you don't need this. If you're growing 2% now and you want to grow 10% tomorrow, well, then we are talking, because you will not get there without lean or continuous improvement or adapting the way you work.
Yeah, thanks. Another question from Madhu Ir. He's thanking you. You have emphasized two areas of continuous improvement of business progress and people development. How does business capability and specifically the use of new tech to address business challenges fit into this approach?
That's an interesting question, because we sometimes have the shiny object syndrome, right? New tech, AI, lean to a certain extent. And I think one of the key questions I learned from one of my former managers was, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And I always get very nervous when I have a tool, new tech, AI, lean, whatever, in search of a problem. So always start with the problem first would be my recommendation. A bit like the answer before to strategy, always start with the problem first. What's the problem we're trying to solve? And then see what might be the best tool to fix it. And if new technology is a good tool to fix an innovation gap we want to close, let's use it. If it isn't, let's not use it just because everybody else talks about it. Let's use what we think the best tool or countermeasure is in order to get us where we want to get to.
Yeah. Next question. What if a general manager or president of a recently acquired company is not keen to adapt Danaher's principles?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether Danaher is specific there. At a certain point of time, people self-select out. Let's be very drastic about it. If you feel continuous improvement isn't for you, Danaher is not a good organization for you now. GE won't be a good organization for you now. Toyota won't be a good organization. So you will need to make a personal choice. And if the personal choice is this isn't for you, you probably want to work elsewhere, get successful there, work in a way where you can be, work in a place where you can be authentic in the way you want to lead. Continuous improvement isn't for everybody. So if you don't want to use that, then that's a choice.
Yeah. Beforehand, when we discussed, we talked a bit about Danaher, and in the early years, as far as I remember, you always, when you acquired a company, started with doing Kaizens. And we discussed a bit about the examples of other acquisitions that you did where you thought, well, maybe not. Can you talk a bit about it? What your learnings were there?
Yeah. So getting people into continuous improvement is important. And if you read the Danaher quarterly investor meetings, it's described well there, right? We get things in. We get Kaizen, or we try to get the Danaher business system into acquisitions early. In the past, way back, there have been some examples where we tried to hold back because of some special circumstances. That usually hasn't been that successful in hindsight, right now, 20 years later. So I think if you're working with acquisitions, if you're working with new parts to your company, if you're working with new people, be honest early and say, well, this is the way we're working here, to give people the chance to make this personal choice and say, yes, I'm 100% in, or no, this isn't for me. I want to go somewhere else. I don't think it would be fair to people to keep them in for 5 years and then say, well, you haven't been committed to continuous improvement. Have that discussion after 6 months or a year.
Yeah, don't wait too long.
Exactly.
Well, we're in our final seconds. There are no questions left, I think.
Excellent.
So
just in time, as they say.
Thank you a lot, Olaf.
Hello.
Been a pleasure to have you here. Roberto's back in the studio. Hi, Roberto. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Olaf, for sharing your beautiful story and learnings.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Olaf. We appreciate your time and willingness to share your experience. So thank you so much. And I wish you both a very good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Good luck.
Thank you.